and welcome to the Divorce Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Divorce Women's Guide podcast. I am so excited that you have tuned in today. I was just telling my guest that she truly is somebody that I have been wanting to interview on my podcast because she is somebody who I have been listening to for quite some time myself and has been somebody that I have looked up to and have truly seen as an incredible resource in this community. And that is my friend and colleague, Karen McMahon of Journey Beyond Divorce. Hello, Karen. How are you?
I am so good, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Of course. Thank you for saying yes. And I'm even more excited about our topic today, everybody. So first of all, when Karen and I connected, we had like an instant emotional and just connection between the two of us and our missions and the work that we do. And so when we were talking about what we wanted to do on today's episode, we decided that we wanted to share with you guys some of the challenges and disadvantages many of you, I know, are experiencing as a result of the high conflict divorces that you are going through. And many times it is a result of being in a relationship with or ending a relationship with a narcissist or somebody who has narcissistic capabilities. So Karen, I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today about this because you have a wealth of knowledge and information to share with our guests today. So thank you for being here. And I want to just take a minute to introduce you in case people don't know who you are, and shame on them if they don't, because they should. Just introduce them to who you are. So Karen's passion is to help men and women to navigate the emotional difficulties of relationships, breakups, and divorce. And she works with her clients to open up the possibility that your current relationship challenges can actually lead to a rewarding voyage of self-discovery and an immensely more pleasing life experience, which is so my language and lingo, hence why we get along so beautifully. And Karen founded the Journey Beyond Divorce in 2010. After discovering that the pain of dissolving her own marriage had been the very stimulus for her own personal transformation. So Karen, welcome.
Thank you. Again, I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. And, we both have very similar mission statements and have an equal passion for really helping people to see their divorce as an empowering experience for them, or a breakup, or, relationship coming to an end. So I know that when we were talking about earlier, you and I decided that, it would really be good for you to address some of the topics and challenges that a lot of people face. And I know a lot of your clients currently face, and you have amazing solutions attached to those. So let's dive right in. So first and foremost, I always ask my guests to kind of share a little bit about their story and what inspired you to do the work that you're doing today.
Right. So, I got married late. I got married in my almost mid-30s, and I was so clear on what I didn't want that I thought I had nailed it. And yet, just a couple of years into my marriage, actually, it was on my daughter's second birthday when we had our one physical altercation, and things had just unraveled so much. And then years, the guilt about should I stay or should I go? And then my divorce ended up being 3.5 years. And I lived in the attic and I had walkie-talkies to the kids, and CPS was involved. The police got involved. I was in sales. I lost almost all my business and was like penniless. And so it was like, I feel like I was given every crisis and difficulty that one could have in a high conflict divorce. And I actually emerged from my divorce. People talk about their settlements. I emerged with a settlement of $60,000 in debt. And so it was just like everything about it was really hard. And yet, when I look back on the journey, the woman I was when I entered was such a shell of herself. And the woman I was when I emerged, I was excited. I was excited about who I'd become and what I could do with this new sense of self and self-love. And so shortly after that, I ended up going into life coaching program and starting my own business. And so for me, I feel like the beauty of taking my pain and making it my passion and my purpose has just been life-changing. And I've now have 10 years of helping others do the same thing, which has just been, it's like I pinch myself that I get to do this every day.
Right. I know, I feel the same way. It's such a gift to take our own life lessons and to be the example and the source of inspiration for so many people who are struggling, who think, I'm never going to get there. Right. You thought it, I'm sure. I sure as hell thought it. I never thought. I remember even a conversation with my best friend where she was like, Wendy, in like 2 years, you're going to look back on this. And I was like, whoa, 2 years. Like, I'm like, I can't even think about 2 years. And here I am 4 years later. It is so rewarding, and the work you do is so important. And I know that there are, we were talking beforehand that there really are 3 common challenges that you see very frequently from clients around, what it's like to kind of leave a relationship, the trauma that they've experienced, what emotions come up as a result of that. So I'd love for you to let's just go there and dive right in with number 1.
Yeah, and what's interesting before I even start is it's not the relationship that creates these challenges. These are challenges that we've actually brought into the relationship because of our family of origin and how we were raised. And I don't know about you, but it's like when I speak to a client and they start connecting the dots between the person that they're married to and about to divorce and mom, dad, or someone else that was in that family of origin, that they begin to see, gosh, I was almost predisposed to this. And so it helps to diminish the guilt and shame around it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things is just that yearning to be loved, where it's like, I will, and I am, everything I talk about today, I'm a recovering perfectionist or recovering codependent. And that right, exactly. And that desire to be loved so much that you would give up all of yourself in the hope of getting something back is a huge one. And a lot of times I'll say to my clients, it's like, there is a Thanksgiving feast for you, and you're crawling around on the floor looking for and accepting crumbs and trying to make them valuable enough. And you deserve so much more. And I think so many of us who end up in these high conflict relationships, there's a self-love issue that then the other person is kind of pouring into that wound, right, through berating and bullying and criticizing, that you start doubting yourself all the more.
Yeah. And I mean, that was me. I mean, I was queen people pleaser, more defined as constantly wanting to please my husband at the time. And, it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. When he was full, I was full, right? He was a constant reflection to me of what I was supposed to feel, what I was supposed to think, what I was supposed to say. And at the end of the day, as we both know very well, it's more than it's unhealthy when you're seeking it from the outside. When you're seeking that love externally, the love has to come from within, which I didn't even realize.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that are an inside job. And
Yeah.
no matter how much somebody else, even if you have someone who tells you how awesome you are and how terrific you are, if you don't believe it, there's a stop. It's not seeping in. That has to come from inside, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so when what happens is you connect to somebody who you're the giver, and I'll give and give and give in the hopes of getting, and so you connect with a taker, and that person's taking. And how often a client said to me, but I gave 200%, and it's like, yeah, and what did you get back, and why was that okay for you? And sometimes this light bulb goes off, like, well, I wanted more, but as you kept giving more and getting less, what was happening? And that's really where the work is, because it's so easy to say, he's selfish, he's a taker, whatever the story is, but then what about your part, right?
Yeah. And I am a giver wholeheartedly, always have been. The difference is that I used to give in hopes of receiving back, right? So there were strings attached, hoping the more I give, the more I should get back.
Right.
Instead of giving with my heart, with no expectation, and at the same time knowing my worth and my value, that I am also valuable enough to be the recipient of something similar back, or more, different, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, more or less, but knowing that I'm valuable enough to be in receipt, regardless of what it is that you give.
And, one of the things that I learned in my journey that was so incredibly valuable was a concept that as I gave and gave, I was abandoning myself.
Mm.
And so if you're listening and you've been giving and giving and giving, in order for us to receive love and commitment, we have to love and commit to ourselves. And so if you've had this practice of, I'll throw my plans away to take care of you, I'll throw my priority away to help with your priority, you abandon yourself over and over again. And so what does the universe do? It brings you abandonment. And yet when you commit to yourself, I would love to help you. I understand it's important. However, I have to do this for myself. I'm committed to myself. Then you begin to attract love and commitment into your life. And so whatever we give ourselves, we actually get. And that to me blew my mind. I had never looked at my efforts as abandoning myself. And yet that's exactly what we do.
Well, yeah, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So I say this all the time, like, what you think you create. So if you believe you're being abandoned, well, that's the reality that you're perpetuating, right? Same thing as the glass half empty or half full. If you're constantly seeing it as half empty, you're always going to see life through that lens, versus seeing it half full. It's a whole shift in perspective. So, everybody listening, your mind is so much more powerful than you give it credit for. The words, the language that you speak to yourself is so powerful, because you wind up creating that life for yourself. So if you want to create a different life, you get to change the conversation that you're having with yourself.
Right. And so much, and this is, I had told you we have this 12-step divorce recovery program, and so much of it is fundamentally based on what happens between your ears, that while you're seeing and dealing with this external chaos, what's happening between your ears is your limiting beliefs, your assumptions, the way you're interpreting how things are happening. And then there's that inner critic, which we all have, that says, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. And so all of that is happening between our ears. And so when we begin to shift and pay attention to what is my perspective on this, what are the perceptions that I have, that's where the real work ends up happening, as you and I know. And in our 12-step program, step 3 is actually called Calm the Chaos. And if you've been with a high conflict person, there's oodles of external chaos. But step 3 is about first calming the internal chaos. And the ripple effect of what happens when you can do that is so powerful and really exciting.
Yeah, and I think that that leads into, what comes up for me as you're saying that is, high control type A personality, people listening, right? Is that sounds great and all, but we like to control everything. We want to be in control. And so many times, and I hear this all the time from clients and just from people all over who share with me, is that they feel like when they're in control, right? They want to, or rather they want to be more in control, right? But what they forget is that they can only control themselves. They can't control the other person. So let's dive into that, because that's literally what comes up. It's like, the chaos. It's like, well, but you want to control it. So,
Right.
What is the problem with that?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is you're in a sailboat. You're trying to get from point A to point B, and you can either grab at the sail and the rudder, or you could grab at the wind. And we're grabbing at the wind.
Yeah.
When all and the wind is him, and the sail and the rudder are you. And when you switch that up, you feel so much more empowered. And so there's so much that's outside of our control. And I think often so many of us are raised where if I'm upset about something, if I have been triggered about something, it's the fault of the external circumstance or person, as opposed to when I'm upset and triggered, I have something to either heal or refine about myself. And that's that internal, that's constantly bringing it in. So a saying, every upset is a setup, it has been like my guiding light, because if I get triggered by my adult child, by my mom, by my ex, before I deal with that, if I deal with what's my trigger and why am I upset, then I shift from the problem to the solution. And I feel so much more empowered, because I actually have control over one thing, and that's me. And that's that big step 4 talks about, how do you go from being problem oriented? I wish he wasn't this way. I wish the legal process didn't take so long. I wish there was more to what's solution oriented. Well, what can I actually have some control over solving?
Hey, it's Wendy here. I wanted to take a quick break from the conversation to let you know about another free event I'm hosting on Tuesday, September 29th, about divorce and narcissism. If you're somebody who is divorcing a narcissist or someone with narcissistic characteristics, this is something you don't want to miss. You will learn what you need to know before you divorce a narcissist, how to successfully negotiate with one, learn financial hacks, how to set boundaries and co-parent with a narcissist, and so much more. The event is free and it's live, and all you have to do is register today by visiting divorceandnarcissism.com. Again, the event is live on Tuesday, September 29th, so block your calendar today. And now let's jump back into the conversation. And something that I also say in that is, it's also the difference between responding, right? You respond when you know that you're coming from a place of what you have control over.
Yes.
Versus reacting, which is the place where you have zero control, but you are grasping at that wind. You are like, I am going to beat the wind. The wind is going to be, I'm going to conquer the wind, right? And there's such a dichotomy there that people don't understand. Like there's a saying that I have, which is called, there's power in the pause, right? And the power in the pause is what gets you from reacting to responding.
Right.
Right.
And actually, we have our very first step is curb the conflict, create space, for exactly that reason. Before you do anything, before you start doing any of the deep work that you can do throughout your divorce, if you do nothing other than the power in the pause, creating that space, breathing, putting yourself in a timeout, giving the emotional, what is Eckhart Tolle calls it, the fear body, giving it a chance to subside, re-accessing your logical mind, which you have no access to when you're in emotional reaction. Now you can come up with a rational response. And what's so amazing and frustrating is the high conflict personality knows how to trigger the spouse. And so the spouse of ends up looking like the crazy one, the screaming, yelling, rageful. I woke up one morning, I looked in the mirror and I was like, okay, I hate myself. I've become my mother and I'm calling a therapist immediately. Like that's how my divorce began, because I was utterly reactive, feeling I had no control. All of this control, the more important control is right there at your fingertips. If you're listening, you just need to shift what you're looking at.
Yes. And to say that again, you have to shift your perspective 100%. You know, I was talking to a friend the other day and she's going through a divorce right now. And she kept saying over and over, I just want to be done. I just want to be done. And I said to her, I was like, I get it. And you don't have control over so many aspects of why you're quote unquote not done yet. So you not being done on the business side, right, doesn't mean that you get to stop anything that you're doing in this moment, right? That you know what you have control over. And so many of us, you know, it's like, I'm sure you hear it too. I just want to be done. I just want to be done. And a lot of that has to do with, well, I'm out of control. I feel out of control of so many things in this process. And it's so important that you get to shift your perspective around what it is that you, instead of focusing on all the things that are out of your control, focus on what you do have control over. Because imagine all that energy, all that time you're spending in what you don't have control over, how much more time not only does it free up in your day, but allows you to focus on the things that you do and can impact and have control over, right?
And I would say I would even take it one step further. Like I would always say to people, if I could give you a fast forward button, it would be the most horrible gift in the world, because really what we yearn to get out of is the discomfort. And yet, as we know, it's the discomfort that grows us. It's being in trial and tribulation that enables us to slow down enough to heal our wounds and to refine our shortcomings. And divorce, which is the most devastating of all transitions because it's so multidimensional, and then of course high conflict divorce, trust me, you do not want a fast forward button, because this is what would happen. If you fast forwarded and you were just done, you would be the same person. You would go out and you would meet the same guy in a different body. You would go through the honeymoon stage, and then you'd rinse and repeat. And at about year 7, you would sit down with your best friend and go, why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah.
But it didn't happen to you. It's like when you take the time to grow through your divorce, then you emerge in that percentage that can have successful relationships, because not only have you changed, but, and I know you and I talk about energy a lot, you're energetically, you are never going to attract the person that you're currently with. You're going to be on the 5th floor, he or she's going to be in the basement. You're not connecting. And so doing that work and trusting, and I know it's hard because it's so painful, but trusting that the pain is the catalyst to self-growth. And my favorite mantra, and again, my divorce was 3.5 years. It was lengthy. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. Sometimes I would say it 1,000 times a day. And I knew there was an end, even though I couldn't see it. And it makes sense that we all want it, but it's actually not what we need.
No, it's not. And, you know, and I also think that people don't recognize that, you know, it's a business transaction on one side, and there's the emotional piece. And the emotional piece is what you get to work on the second you decide that you're done, right? That's when the emotional piece gets started. And, you know, to your point about, you know, wanting to get out of the discomfort, you know, I think that there's discomfort all over the place. A lot of it coming from, you know, many of us don't have a firm foundation of knowledge around, you know, finances and the legal aspect of it. but the side of it that you do have, again, control over, is the emotional piece. And one of the first things that I notice, and, I know you and I have talked about this too, is, as I said before, words are very powerful. And yet we are so mean to ourselves. We say the most horrible things out of pain, and we're so quick to point the finger at ourselves. And I always say that, and I didn't even know what this word meant at the time, but having compassion for yourself, right? And thinking about how it is that you get to now learn how to talk differently to yourself, because Lord knows the things I said, right? There was infidelity in my marriage. It was like, why wasn't I enough? Was I not pretty enough? I failed, right? And things I would never even call my best friend and go, you're a failure. You are so not enough. I would never in a million years say any of these things to my friends. And at the same time, no problem saying them to myself. Right?
Yeah, and I think that that's another one of the key things where that compassion and gentle kindness toward ourselves is typically missing when we're entering these relationships even. And so it's so easy to be unforgiving to yourself. And I'll usually suggest to my clients, I like to use a little humor. I'm like, could you retire the bat? Could you put it in the back of the closet? Because you beat the shit out of yourself with it every time something happens. Stop. And you say your best friend, and the other one that I find is so powerful is, what would you say to your son or daughter? And they get mortified. I would never in a million years talk to my kid that way. It's time to reparent yourself. It's time to start talking to yourself the way you talk to your children or the way you talk to your best friend, because that's going to universe, that's going to draw in the kind of love that you want by being gentle and kind. And I find that self-forgiveness is a huge obstacle for a lot of people. And to really sit with yourself and figure out, well, what is that? Like, and the perfectionist, right? Why am I supposed to be perfect? I wouldn't expect anyone else I love to be so perfect, but nope, I can't forgive myself for that. And how does that serve you? And what it does, and I'm going to talk about emotional energy for a second, when we beat ourselves up, we're pushing ourselves down into like the dungeon of emotional energy. And what you need more than anything right now is to levitate up. You want to be in the penthouse of emotional energy. And in order to do that, compassion, kindness, that's all vital. Those are all vital pieces to it. And throughout our 12-step program, we talk about how to shift your focus and how to acknowledge yourself, and how to trust yourself. That's a big one too, is like to truly trust that inner voice and trust your intuitive knowing.
Yeah, and I think so many people, are so disconnected from their subconscious, right? That, I always say that, our body typically reacts first, and then our mind catches up. And most people don't pay attention to the body. They just automatically go to what's up here. And so, the subconscious is what your body reacts, right? It's that gut reaction. It's, similar to your story. Like, there's moments where I have, I listen to my gut, even though my head is trying to talk me out of it. I have to pay attention to my body in that particular time. And, I think that people forget that that's the first cue. It's not always paying attention to what's up here. And at the same time, that's where you get to start questioning what's going on up here. But the body, in my opinion, is what creates the energy, right? And you have the power to shift the energy, which will then shift your mind, right? And thinking about things from other perspectives, because if the energy comes into you one way, you don't have to give into it. You have the power to change it.
Right. And I think all of that is connected to truly honoring the wide range of emotions that you have. And if you've been living with a narcissist or somebody who shuts you down, who has that black and white thinking, who's 1,000% sure that they're right and you're wrong, it's very easy to start questioning emotions and to judge emotions. And, feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are. And if you don't feel your feelings, honor the grieving process, which is messy and sloppy and all over the place. It's not linear. It doesn't have a schedule to it. Let me say that in the positive, if you honor your feelings and you honor the grieving process, you are going to, it's almost like it greases the recovery process. It will help so much. And the tip is we have to feel, honor, process and release emotions so that we have a fresh heart and an ability to then invite in all different types of relationships. And when I say new love, I'm not just talking romantic, new girlfriends, better relationships with your kids, your family, everybody.
Yeah, and I think, a way to kind of sum up the conversation that, we've had today too, is that people just understanding that it starts from within you. You get to work on yourself. You get to love yourself. You get to have loving kindness. You get to be mindful. You get to know your worth. You get to be aware of what it is that you have control over, right? Instead of either looking in the rearview mirror or constantly looking to somebody else for validation or for, being the person we want them to be. It starts within you, because once you know you're enough, once you know what loving yourself feels like, the world opens up. And forgiveness is part of that too. That was probably the hardest piece for me to understand and learn, was forgiving myself in this whole process. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that, but everybody listening, I would love for you to share one last bit of wisdom with everyone before we wrap our discussion today.
Yeah, I would say we all uniquely have our own path, and having a healthy support team, as divorce coaches, we always encourage this. And so for your friends and loved ones, just because they love you doesn't mean that they make the cut to be on your team. So if they're into bashing your ex or telling you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go out and start dating, and they're not listening, and as much as they love you, they may not be on your A team. And to have an A team that lifts you up, that keeps the focus on you, that is encouraging, that is not judging, that is priceless. And then the other people, when your capacity is good, you talk to them. When your capacity is down, you always go to your A team. And that can be a game changer right then and there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've got to have a team in place when you're going through divorce. I call it lone wolfing, doesn't serve anybody, and it really just keeps you stuck, which is not where anybody wants to be. So amazing, wonderful advice, Karen. Could not agree more. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your wisdom today. And, I always learn. I've written down a couple of things. I always learn from you every time I am in your presence. So thank you so much. And I know everybody tuning in today is learning something as well.
Thank you. Thanks again for the invite. It's been a pleasure being with you.
Of course. And before we sign off, I know that you also have a very generous gift to offer our listeners, which will be in the show notes for you guys to access. So I'd love for you to just do a little promo for that too.
Yeah. So we have a divorce survival kit, and it's just 5 tips. It's like, it's so important, especially when you're starting, to just have baby steps and not be overwhelmed. And so these 5 tips really help you to shift your focus and to invest where it's most helpful. And your energy is depleted right now. And so being very mindful about what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And so our divorce survival kit really helps you get off on the right path with those 5 tips.
Wonderful. And then how can people get a hold of you and reach you?
So the company is Journeying Beyond Divorce. Our website is jbddivorcesupport.com, and our 12-step program and our podcast too. We have a Journey Beyond Divorce podcast, which you can find on any of the platforms. So those two places are the best way to reach us, and we would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. And all of that information is in the show notes. So definitely check it out. Go listen to Karen's podcast. It's amazing. And I've learned so much from you today. Karen, thank you again for being my guest. It's truly been an honor today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Of course. And everybody tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you walked away with a lot of amazing and incredible information to help you navigate wherever it is that you are in your process. That is my goal with each and every episode. So thank you all for listening and tuning in, sending you so much love, light, and joy. Mwah. And I will see you guys in next week's episode. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.